Well, David Payne was a contemporary Christian music executive from England when he landed his very first acting role, and it was right here in Nashville, playing the great author and theologian C.S. Lewis in the play Shadowlands. It led to a life-changing new career as a Lewis scholar and the creator and star of the one-man show, An Evening with C.S. Lewis, My Life's Journey. It's been seen now by over 1 million people. It is a real honor to welcome to the show David Payne. David, good to have you here.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
I think the most remarkable part of your story is that you saw an ad that said, looking for someone to play C.S. Lewis, need a British accent. You'd never acted before.
No, I hadn't. I'd never been on stage before. I was 55 at the time. And as I say, it's the Shadowlands story about C.S. Lewis and Joy. It was playing in Nashville, and they said auditions for Shadowlands, British accents are help. I thought, well, I've got a British accent.
No acting experience, just a British accent.
No, but I'd had it a long time. So, so I went along. I thought I might get a small part with my British accent, and I won the lead role, C.S. Lewis.
Fantastic. What is it about C.S. Lewis? Because I know that after you did the role, you became fascinated by his life and his message, and it became much more than just a role acting, but an actual scholarly study on your part about him.
Oh, I had to do a lot of study, especially for the show An Evening with C.S. Lewis, and I wanted to show the man behind the books. Just an intriguing character, very humble he was. He was very generous. Not a lot of people know, but he gave most of his book royalties away.
Did not know that.
Yep, he did. And I think the thing that I admire most was something that Douglas Gresham, his stepson, said. He was the most thoroughly Christian man he'd ever met.
Great compliment. The book that he wrote, Mere Christianity, was one that was so powerful, had a great impact on me as a college student. And then later, the book that he wrote, The Problem of Payne, maybe one of the most single, impactful books I ever read, because it had to do with the difficulty of losing his wife and the challenge of why do we hurt? If we're Christians, aren't we supposed to have everything wonderful and supposed to be good for us?
Yeah, Lewis wrote The Problem of Payne, and actually he wrote it before Joy died. And the interesting thing was that when Joy did die, he found himself thrown into all sorts of confusion. He found his faith even under attack. And he realized that there was one thing about writing as a theory, without having fully experienced it, and then suddenly he's right in at the deep end and he has to fight through, and then he comes up and he realizes that God has a purpose in everything.
Well, was there a particular part of C.S. Lewis's life that influenced you more than others?
You know, when you play a character like Lewis, and you spend a lot of time doing it, as I do, you want to think you're portraying a man who is worthy of being portrayed. And I think Lewis really was. I can't think of too many other people that I would like to portray. And people ask me if I will do other things, and I do other little things. But my answer to them is, look, I play C.S. Lewis. That's my main role.
You do this all over the country. Are you surprised at the reactions of audience members, some of whom may know the Chronicles of Narnia, but they may not understand what a Christian scholar he was and the impact that he's had?
I think that's true. I think people come along, hopefully, to my show, and they find out a lot about Lewis, about his Christian faith, but it's not a Christian play per se. It's about a man who wrote books and became famous about writing books. And I have a lot of people say to me after the show, they'll say, do you know what? I'm going to go and read C.S. Lewis.
What a great compliment. You're going to perform a scene from the C.S. Lewis portrayal. Tell us a little about what we're going to see.
Well, the play is set in his home, and he's entertaining a group of American writers who have come to see him, and they want to hear a little bit about his life. And the scene you're going to see tonight if I can remember it, of course. The scene you're going to see tonight is the opening scene.
Well, we're excited to have you here, excited to have C.S. Lewis with us in that role. And while David Payne prepares to perform, Keith Bilbrey is going to tell us how we can learn more about David and the C.S. Lewis portrayal all over the country.
Well, Governor, you can learn all about David Payne's plays and find showtimes and tickets to upcoming performances at his website, birdandbabyproductions.com. And now, performing a scene from An Evening with C.S. Lewis, My Life's Journey. Here is David Payne.
Good evening. My main name is C.S. Lewis, but do feel free to call me Jack. Most of my friends do. And welcome to my home. I hope you're not too squashed in. British houses are not as big as their American counterparts, I'm told. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking exactly what the poet T.S. Eliot said to me when he first met me. Mr. Lewis, you appear much older than your published photographs would lead me to believe. One felt like replying, Mr. Eliot, you appear more lucid than your published poems would lead me to believe. Well, I want you to know that it's a delight to have you here. I understand many of you, or all of you, are from America. And I have to say, without my American readers, I think my success as an author would be somewhat diminished. What do they say? An author is not without honor save in his own country. Or is that a prophet? Well, either way, there's truth in it. It reminds me of a little ditty I once heard. I think I can remember it. An author from Merrow was a very odd fellow. He only could write in a tub. With waterproof ink and a steaming hot drink, he would write till he needed some grub. When he bathed in red wine, he wrote words of rhyme and sent them to ladies of fame. But these ladies of note forgot what he wrote and couldn't remember his name. When he bathed in cow's milk, his words were like silk, and he sent them to men of the cloth. But these gossamer notes were fed to the goats, and they all developed a cough. When he bathed in pea soup, his words were astute, and he sent them to those of sharp wit. But these words for the wise were quickly despised, being seen as the work of a twit. One day in his tub he started to blub, for all of his writings were spurned. His friends even said, your writings we dread. 'Twould be best if they all were burned. So this author in vain then boarded a plane and flew to a land far away. But in this new land, his writings seemed grand. Thank God for the US of A. Now, your leader told me that you were here and you want to hear a little bit about my life and a little bit about my writing. So where should we start? Well, if you don't mind, I'll start where every self-respecting Englishman, half Irishman would start, with a cup of tea. My health has not been too good recently, and I find that tea helps to keep me going. So if you don't mind, I'm going to indulge while I speak to you. You Americans drink iced tea, don't you? How strange. Why would you put perfectly good tea in ice cold water? Still, I suppose that dates back to your first big tea party, doesn't it? Now, your leader asked me to answer some questions I very often get asked. One question I am asked a lot is, why did I write the Narnia Chronicles? And even though I told people why I did write them, some people still assume that I was looking for a method by which I could say something about Christianity to children. And I decided that the best method would be a fairy tale. And then I created allegories to embody basic Christian truth. All poppycock, of course. I couldn't write it that way even if I wanted to. Oh no. Narnia all began with images. A fawn with an umbrella, a lamppost, queen with a sledge, a magnificent lion, who, by the way, I first met in a nightmare. And I saw my job as simply linking these images together into a story, and one that had neither a love interest or any deep psychology. And as far as I'm concerned, the method that does not contain those two elements is, by definition, a fairy tale. But simply, I wrote fairy tales because the fairy tale was the ideal form for what I wanted to say. And initially, there wasn't a Christian aspect. That inserted itself later without any help from me. And of course, as we all know, God works in mysterious ways.